Anna Kowalski was the kind of person who always put others first. She wasn't flashy or loud, but her quiet strength and kindness made her stand out in a world that often felt cold and rushed. Born to Polish parents, she grew up learning two things early on: how to work hard and how to care for people. Her mom used to say, "If you take care of others, life will find a way to take care of you." Anna believed that with all her heart. After finishing nursing school, Anna moved to a big city where she landed a job at St. Vincent's private hospital. It wasn't just any hospital. It catered to some of the wealthiest patients in the country. Celebrities, CEOs, even politicians walked through its doors. For someone like Anna, who came from humble beginnings, working there felt both exciting and overwhelming. On one hand, she loved being able to help people no matter their background. On the other hand, dealing with entitled patients could be exhausting. But Anna didn't let those challenges get to her. Every day she wore her scrubs with pride, ready to face whatever came her way. Whether it was calming down a nervous child before surgery or patiently explaining medication instructions to an elderly patient, Anna gave everything she had. Her coworkers admired her dedication, though they sometimes joked that she worked too hard for her own good. One afternoon, as Anna was finishing up her rounds, the charge nurse pulled her aside. "We've got a new admission," she said, handing over a clipboard. "Room 305. You'll be his primary caregiver." Anna glanced at the name on the chart, Richard Langston. Even if she hadn't recognized the name right away, the description would have tipped her off. Billionaire tech mogul, founder of a company everyone knew about, and notoriously difficult to please. Rumors about him spread faster than wildfire among the staff. Some said he was rude and impatient. Others claimed he demanded perfection from everyone around him. But none of that mattered to Anna. To her, he was just another patient who needed care. When she stepped into room 305 for the first time, she found him lying in bed, staring at his phone like it held all the answers to life. He looked pale and tired, far removed from the sharp, commanding figure she'd seen in magazine covers. Still, there was something about the way he carried himself, even in a hospital gown, that screamed power. "Good evening, Mr. Langston," Anna said softly, introducing herself. "I'll be taking care of you during your stay here." He barely glanced up, his fingers flying across the screen. "Fine," he muttered, dismissing her with a wave. Anna didn't take it personally. Over the years, she'd learned that fear and discomfort often hid behind gruff exteriors. Instead of reacting, she focused on her tasks, checking his vitals and making sure he was comfortable. As she worked, she noticed little things about him: the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the faint tremor in his hands. Whatever stress had brought him here, it hadn't fully left yet. For the next couple of days, Anna did her best to provide top-notch care. She brought him water when he forgot to ask, adjusted his pillows without being told, and answered his questions honestly, even when they bordered on interrogations. Slowly but surely, she began to see glimpses of humanity beneath the billionaire facade. Once, when she mentioned that she spoke Polish, he raised an eyebrow and asked why she hadn't pursued opportunities abroad. Another time, he actually thanked her for bringing him tea, a rare moment of acknowledgement that caught her off guard. Despite these small breakthroughs, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger loomed ahead. Working in private healthcare meant walking a tightrope between professionalism and personal connection, especially with high-profile patients. One wrong move could cost you not only your reputation, but also your job. Little did Anna know that tightrope was about to snap and send her tumbling into chaos. It happened on what seemed like an ordinary morning. Anna entered room 305 carrying her usual supplies. Mr. Langston was sitting upright in bed, scrolling through emails on his tablet. The room was quiet, except for the rhythmic beeping of the heart monitor. Anna started her routine, checking his blood pressure and jotting down notes. Everything seemed normal until her phone buzzed loudly in her pocket. Startled, Anna pulled it out and saw the caller ID flash. It was her mom back in Poland. Calls from home were rare, so when they came, they usually meant something important. Without thinking twice, Anna pressed accept. "Przepraszam," she murmured quickly to Mr. Langston, excusing herself in Polish before stepping aside to answer. Her mom sounded frantic on the other end, speaking rapidly in their native language. Anna tried to calm her down, assuring her that everything was okay while keeping one ear tuned to the room. When the call ended a minute later, she hung up and turned back to Mr. Langston, offering an apologetic smile. "I'm sorry for the interruption," she said, slipping back into English. "That was my mother. She's fine now." To her surprise, Mr. Langston didn't scowl or complain. Instead, he studied her with a curious expression. "You speak Polish?" he asked, his tone clipped, but not unkind. "Yes, sir," Anna replied, tucking her phone back into her pocket. "It's my first language." He nodded slowly, as if processing this new information. Then, without another word, he returned to his emails, leaving Anna to finish her duties. At the time, she thought nothing of it. After all, answering a quick call wasn't exactly groundbreaking behavior. But deep down, a nagging voice whispered that maybe, just maybe, she'd crossed a line she hadn't realized existed. Little did Anna know that brief exchange would set off a chain reaction she couldn't have predicted. By tomorrow, her entire world would change, and not in a good way. The next morning, Anna woke up with the same routine she always followed, brewing a strong cup of coffee, packing her lunch, and mentally preparing herself for another day at the hospital. She didn't think much about the phone call from the previous day. To her, it had been a minor distraction, something that happened in the blink of an eye. But as she walked into St. Vincent's private hospital, something felt off. The air seemed heavier than usual, and the staff members who normally greeted her with smiles barely looked her way. A few whispered behind their hands when they saw her coming down the hall. At first, Anna brushed it off. Hospitals were busy places full of stress and drama. Maybe there was some big emergency brewing that she didn't know about yet. Still, the unease lingered in the pit of her stomach. Then came the summons. As Anna was tying her scrubs in front of the mirror in the locker room, one of the senior nurses approached her. "Anna," she said quietly, avoiding eye contact. "You're needed in Dr. Carter's office." Dr. Carter was the head administrator of the hospital, a stern woman known for running things like a well-oiled machine. Being called to her office wasn't necessarily bad, but it also wasn't something anyone looked forward to. Anna's heart sank a little, though she tried to stay calm. "Did she say what it's about?" she asked, hoping for clarity. The nurse shook her head. "Just go straight there." With a deep breath, Anna made her way to the admin wing. The closer she got, the more her nerves tightened. When she finally reached Dr. Carter's door, she knocked softly and stepped inside. What she saw stopped her cold. Sitting across from Dr. Carter was none other than Richard Langston himself. His presence alone turned the small office into a pressure cooker. He sat upright, his posture stiff, his eyes sharp and unreadable. Next to him was Dr. Carter, whose usually composed demeanor now radiated discomfort. The tension in the room was palpable. "Ms. Kowalski," Dr. Carter began, her voice clipped and formal. "Please have a seat." Anna obeyed, perching nervously on the edge of the chair. Her mind raced. Why was he here? And why did this feel so serious? "We regret to inform you," Dr. Carter continued, glancing briefly at Mr. Langston before returning her gaze to Anna, "that your employment at St. Vincent's has been terminated effective immediately." For a moment, Anna thought she'd misheard. "What?" she blurted out, her voice cracking. "Why?" Dr. Carter hesitated, clearly uncomfortable delivering the news. Once again, all eyes shifted to Mr. Langston. He leaned forward slightly, his expression unreadable but commanding. "Professionalism is non-negotiable in this facility," he said, his tone icy and detached. "Speaking another language in front of a patient without permission is unacceptable." Anna's jaw dropped. Was he serious? That phone call? The one that lasted less than 60 seconds? This was why she was losing her job. But I apologized," she stammered, her face flushing hot with embarrassment and disbelief. "It was an emergency call from my mother. I didn't mean to disturb him." Mr. Langston raised an eyebrow, unimpressed by her explanation. Regardless of intent, actions have consequences, he replied coolly. Patients deserve transparency and respect. They shouldn't have to guess what's being said around them. Anna wanted to argue, to explain how ridiculous this whole situation was. How many times had she seen doctors and nurses step out of rooms to take personal calls? How often had conversations in foreign languages occurred right under everyone's noses, without anyone batting an eyelash? But no matter how unfair it felt, she knew arguing wouldn't change anything. Not with someone like him sitting across from her. Dr. Carter cleared her throat, breaking the silence. We understand this is difficult, Ms. Kowalski, but we must uphold certain standards. You'll be provided with severance pay and a letter of recommendation if you'd like. A letter of recommendation? Anna almost laughed bitterly. What good would that do when the reason for her termination would overshadow any positive remarks? She nodded numbly, too stunned to respond further. When the meeting ended, Anna gathered her belongings in a daze. Colleagues avoided her gaze as she passed through the halls, their pity evident in every glance. Some offered weak smiles or murmured condolences, but most kept their distance. By the time she stepped outside, tears streaming down her cheeks, Anna felt like the ground beneath her feet had crumbled away. Losing her job hit Anna harder than she expected. It wasn't just about the paycheck, it was the loss of purpose, the sense of identity that came with being a nurse. For years, she'd poured her heart into caring for others, treating each patient as if they were family. Now, she was being cast aside because of a trivial mistake, one that shouldn't have mattered in the grand scheme of things. At home, Anna replayed the events over and over in her mind. Had she really done something so wrong? Could she have handled the situation differently? These questions haunted her, keeping her awake at night. But as days turned into weeks, reality set in. Bills piled up, groceries became luxuries, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. To make ends meet, Anna took whatever work she could find. She cleaned offices late at night, scrubbing floors until her knees ached. She babysat for families during the day, entertaining restless kids while trying not to think about where her life had gone off track. On weekends, she delivered groceries, lugging heavy bags up flights of stairs for tips that barely covered gas money. Each rejection letter from other hospitals only added salt to the wound. Some cited her termination as a red flag, others simply ghosted her after interviews. With each setback, Anna's confidence wavered. Doubts crept in, whispering cruel reminders of her failure. But even in her darkest moments, a stubborn spark of determination refused to die. Anna decided to fight back. Not against Richard Langston or the hospital, but against the circumstances that threatened to break her. She enrolled in online courses to expand her skills, determined to prove that she was more than the sum of her mistakes. Late nights spent studying replaced restless hours of self-pity. Slowly, she began to rebuild. Not just her career, but her sense of self-worth. Meanwhile, whispers about her dismissal spread beyond the hospital walls. Friends and former co-workers reached out, offering support and advice. Some encouraged her to confront Mr. Langston publicly, suggesting he owed her an apology. Others warned her against stirring up trouble, fearing it might harm her chances of finding new opportunities. But Anna wasn't interested in revenge. All she wanted was closure, an explanation for why her life had been turned upside down over, something so trivial, and somewhere deep inside she hoped that maybe, just maybe, fate would give her a chance to reclaim what she'd lost. Little did she know, that chance was closer than she thought. Months passed, and Anna's life settled into a rhythm of survival. She woke up early, worked odd jobs throughout the day, and spent her evenings studying online courses to improve her skills. It was exhausting, but she refused to give up. Every night as she lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she reminded herself why she started this journey in the first place, to help people. That dream hadn't died. It had just been buried under layers of frustration and hardship. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. Walking through grocery stores or riding public transport, Anna couldn't shake the feeling that people could see her struggles written all over her face. She hated how vulnerable she felt, how much she missed the stability and purpose her old job had given her. But what hurt the most wasn't losing her position. It was being dismissed so easily, reduced to nothing more than a problem because of one tiny mistake. One chilly Saturday morning, Anna decided to volunteer at a local health fair. A friend from nursing school had told her about it, saying it might be a good way to network and get back into the medical field. At first, Anna hesitated. What if someone recognized her? What if word got out about her firing and no one wanted to hire her? But then she remembered something her mom used to say. Sometimes you have to take risks to find blessings. The health fair was held in a community center on the outskirts of town. Dozens of booths lined the room, offering free screenings, health advice, and information about local services. Anna signed up to work as a translator for Polish-speaking attendees. Many immigrants in the area struggled with language barriers, especially when it came to healthcare, so her role was crucial. For the first time in months, Anna felt like she was making a difference again. As the event began, crowds poured in. Families with young children, elderly couples holding hands, teenagers dragging their reluctant parents along. Anna greeted each person warmly, switching between English and Polish seamlessly. She explained medical terms, helped fill out forms, and even calmed nervous patients waiting for blood pressure checks. The hours flew by, and for once she forgot about her troubles. Then, halfway through the afternoon, she saw him. At first, Anna didn't believe her eyes. Standing near one of the main booths, surrounded by a small group of admirers, was none other than Richard Langston. He wore a sleek suit, his presence commanding attention despite the casual setting. A banner behind him read, "Langston Foundation, Bridging Gaps in Healthcare." Apparently, he was promoting some new initiative aimed at improving access to medical care for underserved communities. Anna froze, her heart pounding in her chest. Part of her wanted to turn around and leave before he noticed her. But another part, a louder, angrier part, refused to run. After everything he'd done, she deserved answers. Taking a deep breath, she approached him, ignoring the knot forming in her stomach. "Mr. Langston," she said firmly, stepping into his line of sight. Her voice trembled slightly, but she forced herself to meet his gaze. He looked surprised for a split second, then composed himself. "Ms. Kowalski," he replied, his tone neutral. "What brings you here?" Anna ignored the question. "Do you remember me?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. "Do you remember firing me?" A murmur rippled through the small crowd gathered around them. Some people exchanged curious glances, while others leaned in closer, eager to hear what would happen next. Mr. Langston glanced around briefly, clearly aware of the attention they were attracting. Then, without missing a beat, he gestured toward a quieter corner of the room. "Let's talk somewhere private," he said curtly. Anna followed him, her pulse racing. They stopped near an empty booth, away from prying ears. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Mr. Langston broke the silence. "Yes, I remember," he admitted, his expression unreadable. "And yes, I played a role in your termination, but it wasn't personal." Anna blinked, caught off guard by his admission. "Not personal?" she echoed, her voice rising slightly. "You cost me my job over a phone call. How is that not personal?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair, a rare sign of vulnerability. "Look, I know how it must seem, but let me explain something. When I was admitted to St. Vincent's, I wasn't just there as a patient. I was investigating corruption within the hospital administration. Things weren't adding up. Billing discrepancies, unethical practices, favoritism. I needed leverage to expose it." Anna stared at him, trying to process his words. "And firing me gave you leverage?" "It wasn't supposed to go that far," he said quickly, his tone softening. "I flagged your incident, not because I thought you were corrupt, but because it fit the narrative I was building. I assumed you'd bounce back quickly, maybe even land a better position elsewhere. Instead..." He trailed off, looking genuinely conflicted for the first time. Anna felt a surge of anger mixed with disbelief. "Instead, I lost everything," she finished for him. My job, my reputation, my confidence. Did you ever stop to think about how your narrative would affect real people? Mr. Langston winced as if her words had struck a nerve. No, I didn't, he admitted quietly. And I regret that now. You're right, I should have considered the human impact. But hindsight doesn't fix what happened. For a long moment, Anna didn't respond. She simply stood there staring at him, letting his confession sink in. As furious as she was, she realized something important. Revenge wouldn't change her situation. Arguing with him wouldn't magically undo the past few months of struggle. If she wanted to move forward, she needed to focus on solutions, not blame. Before walking away, she turned back to him. If you really believe in fixing things, if you truly care about helping people, then give me a chance to rebuild my career. Prove that your foundation isn't just about fancy slogans and photo ops. With that, Anna left him standing there, her head held high. She didn't expect anything to come of their conversation. To her, it was closure, a final confrontation, to lay her grievances to rest. But unbeknownst to her, Mr. Langston wasn't done yet. Somewhere deep inside, he knew he owed her more than an apology. And soon enough, he'd find a way to make amends. That evening, as Anna walked home, she felt lighter than she had in weeks. Confronting Mr. Langston hadn't erased her pain, but it had given her clarity. She realized that holding on to bitterness wouldn't bring her peace, it would only weigh her down. Moving forward meant forgiving, not forgetting. And though she still had a long road ahead, she was ready to face it head-on. Little did she know, fate had one last twist in store. One that would change her life forever. Weeks passed after Anna's confrontation with Richard Langston at the health fair. Life went on as usual, or at least as usual as it could be for someone piecing together a new future from scraps of hope and determination. She continued, working odd jobs during the day and studying late into the night, fueled by coffee and sheer willpower. Her days were long, and her nights were even longer, but she refused to give up. Every small victory, a good grade in an online course, a kind word from a stranger, felt like proof that she was heading in the right direction. Still, there were moments when doubt crept in. What if she never found another nursing job? What if the stigma of being fired followed her forever? These questions haunted her, especially on quiet evenings when the city outside her window seemed to buzz with opportunities she couldn't reach. But Anna had learned something important over the past few months. Resilience wasn't about avoiding pain. It was about finding ways to keep moving forward despite it. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, everything changed. Anna was sitting at her kitchen table sipping tea while reviewing notes for an upcoming exam, when her phone buzzed. It was an email notification. Normally, she wouldn't have paid much attention. Most emails were spam or reminders about bills. But something about this one caught her eye. The subject line read, "Invitation to interview, Langston Foundation Medical Research Center." Her heart skipped a beat. Was this some kind of joke? A cruel twist of fate? She hesitated before opening it, half expecting to find a scam or a generic rejection letter. Instead, what she saw made her jaw drop. The email explained that the Langston Foundation was launching a state-of-the-art medical research center focused on advancing healthcare access for underserved communities. They were looking for skilled professionals who shared their vision, and Anna's name had been personally recommended for a key position. The message included details about the role, which sounded perfect for her experience and qualifications. At the bottom there was a note. "We encourage you to apply and look forward to discussing how your talents can contribute to our mission." Anna read the email 3 times, her mind racing. Could this really be happening? Had Richard Langston actually followed through on his promise, or was this just another empty gesture meant to ease his guilt? Part of her wanted to delete the email and forget about it altogether. Why trust someone who had already hurt her so deeply? But another part, a louder, more hopeful part, whispered that maybe, just maybe, this was her chance to start over. The interview took place 2 weeks Later at the Foundation's headquarters, a sleek glass building in the heart of the city. As Anna stepped inside, she felt a mix of excitement and nerves. The lobby was modern and welcoming, with soft lighting and walls adorned with quotes about compassion and innovation. Staff members greeted her warmly, guiding her to a conference room where the interview panel waited. When she entered, Anna immediately recognized Richard Langston seated among them. He looked different today, not quite as intimidating as he had in the hospital or at the health fair. There was a hint of warmth in his expression, though his posture remained as rigid as ever. Next to him sat a woman introduced as Dr. Evelyn Park, the director of the research center, along with 2 other senior staff members. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Kowalski," Dr. Park said with a smile. "We're thrilled to meet you." Anna nodded, forcing herself to stay calm. "Thank you for having me," she replied, taking a seat across from the panel. The interview began with standard questions about her background, skills, and experience. Anna answered confidently, drawing on years of dedication to patient care and her recent efforts to expand her knowledge through online courses. She talked passionately about her belief in equitable health care, emphasizing how important it was to bridge gaps for marginalized communities. Her words flowed naturally, driven by genuine conviction rather than rehearsed answers. Then, inevitably, the conversation turned to her time at St. Vincent's and her dismissal. Anna braced herself, knowing this moment would define whether she got the job or not. Dr. Park leaned forward slightly. "Your resume is impressive, but we noticed a gap in employment. Can you tell us what happened?" Anna swallowed hard, glancing briefly at Richard Langston before meeting Dr. Park's gaze. "I was let go from my previous position due to a misunderstanding," she explained carefully. "It involved a minor incident that escalated unnecessarily. While I still believe the decision was unfair, I've chosen to focus on learning from the experience and growing professionally." There was a pause as the panel exchanged glances. Then Richard Langston spoke up, his voice steady but tinged with regret. "To clarify, Ms. Kowalski's termination was partly my doing. At the time, I was pursuing an investigation into unethical practices within the hospital administration. Unfortunately, my actions had unintended consequences, for which I take full responsibility." Anna's cheeks flushed, but she kept her composure. She hadn't expected him to admit fault so openly in front of others. His honesty surprised her, and maybe even earned a sliver of respect. Dr. Park nodded thoughtfully. "Thank you both for addressing that. We value transparency here, and we appreciate your willingness to reflect on difficult experiences." The interview continued. Anna found herself relaxing. The panel asked insightful questions, clearly interested in her perspective and ideas. By the end, she felt hopeful, not because she assumed she'd get the job, but because she'd given it her best shot. Whatever happened next, she knew she'd walked out of that room with her head held high. A week later, Anna received the call she'd been waiting for. She was offered the position, a role tailored specifically to her strengths and passions. Overwhelmed with emotion, she accepted without hesitation. This wasn't just a job. It was a fresh start, a chance to rebuild her career on her own terms. On her first day at the research center, Anna felt a sense of belonging she hadn't experienced in years. The team welcomed her warmly, eager to collaborate on projects that aligned with her values. For the first time since losing her job, she felt truly seen, not as a mistake or a failure, but as someone capable of making a difference. Richard Langston kept his distance initially, likely aware of the complicated history between them. But over time, their interactions became less formal and more collaborative. He occasionally sought her input on initiatives, acknowledging her expertise and hard work. Slowly but surely, Anna began to forgive him, not because he deserved it, but because holding on to resentment no longer served her. Together, they worked toward a shared mission, improving healthcare access for those who needed it most. Anna poured her heart into every project, channeling her struggles into meaningful action. And though she never forgot the hardships she endured, she emerged stronger, proving that even in the face of adversity, hope and perseverance could pave the way to redemption. In the end, Anna realized something profound. Life's greatest challenges often lead to its most unexpected blessings. Anna's first few months at the Langston Foundation Medical Research Center were a whirlwind of activity. Every day brought new challenges, but also new opportunities to grow and make an impact. The center was unlike any workplace she'd ever experienced. It wasn't just about treating patients, it was about reimagining healthcare from the ground up. Teams worked tirelessly on projects ranging from mobile clinics for rural areas to programs that trained local volunteers in basic medical care. It was inspiring, overwhelming, and exactly what Anna needed to reignite her passion for nursing. From the start, Anna threw herself into her role with everything she had. Her position involved coordinating outreach efforts, designing educational materials, and working directly with underserved communities. She spent hours traveling to neighborhoods where access to quality healthcare was practically non-existent, listening to people's stories and learning firsthand about the barriers they faced. Whether it was language differences, financial struggles, or mistrust of medical institutions, Anna approached each challenge with empathy and determination. But as much as she loved the work, there were moments when the weight of responsibility felt crushing. Some days, after long hours in the field or late nights preparing reports, Anna would sit alone in her apartment, staring at the walls, wondering if she'd bitten off more than she could chew. Could one person really make a difference in a system so broken? These doubts haunted her, especially when progress seemed slow or setbacks piled up. Yet every time she considered giving up, someone, a grateful patient, a colleague, even a stranger, would remind her why she kept going. One such moment came during a community health fair organized by the foundation. Held in a low-income neighborhood, on the outskirts of the city, the event drew hundreds of residents eager to learn about free screenings and preventive care. Anna was stationed at a booth providing blood pressure checks and answering questions about chronic illnesses like diabetes and hypertension. As the line grew longer, she barely had time to catch her breath. Midway through the afternoon, an elderly woman approached her booth, leaning heavily on a cane. Her face was lined with age and worry, but her eyes sparkled with warmth. "Can you check my sugar levels?" she asked softly, holding out a trembling hand. "I haven't seen a doctor in years." Anna nodded and gently guided her to a chair. While performing the test, she struck up a conversation. The woman explained that she lived alone and relied on Social Security to get by. Visiting a doctor meant taking 2 buses and waiting hours for an appointment she couldn't afford. By the time Anna finished explaining how the foundation could help her enroll in affordable healthcare programs, tears glistened in the woman's eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, clutching Anna's hand. "You're a blessing." That simple exchange stayed with Anna long after the health fair ended. It reminded her why she'd chosen this path in the first place, not for fame or fortune, but to be there for people who needed her most. Moments like these fueled her resolve, pushing her to keep fighting even when the odds felt insurmountable. Despite her growing confidence, Anna's relationship with Richard Langston remained complicated. Their interactions were professional, bordering on cordial, but there was always an unspoken tension between them. He rarely mentioned their past, and when he did, it was usually in passing comments that hinted at lingering guilt. For his part, Anna tried to focus on the present, viewing him not as the man who had cost her a job, but as a colleague working toward a shared goal. Still, old wounds took time to heal. One evening, as Anna was packing up her things to leave the office, Richard appeared at her desk. "Do you have a minute?" he asked, his tone unusually hesitant. She glanced up, surprised. "Sure, what's up?" He gestured toward a nearby conference room. "Let's talk in private." Curious and slightly apprehensive, Anna followed him inside. Once the door closed behind them, Richard turned to face her, his expression serious. "I wanted to update you on something," he began. "The investigation I started at St. Vincent's, we finally have enough evidence to expose the corruption. The board is being held accountable and changes are underway." Anna blinked, processing his words. "That's good news," she said cautiously. "But what does that mean for me?" "It means your name will be cleared," he replied firmly. "Everything that happened, the reason you were fired, It'll come out publicly. People will know the truth. For a moment, Anna didn't respond. Part of her felt vindicated, relieved that justice was finally being served. But another part wondered if it mattered anymore. So much time had passed since her dismissal, the damage had already been done. Would clearing her name change anything now? "I appreciate the effort," she said slowly, choosing her words carefully. "But honestly, I've moved on. This job, this team, they've given me a second chance. That's what matters most to me right now." Richard studied her, his gaze thoughtful. "You've grown stronger," he observed after a pause. "I can see it in the way you carry yourself, the way you lead others. You've turned a difficult experience into something meaningful." Anna managed a small smile. "We all have our battles to fight," she said simply. "Mine taught me resilience. Yours taught you accountability. Maybe that's how growth works. We learn from the hard stuff." Richard nodded, looking almost humbled. "You're right," he admitted. "And I owe you an apology, not just for what happened back then, but for underestimating you. You're proving every day that you're exactly the kind of person this world needs more of." Anna felt a lump form in her throat. His words weren't perfect, but they carried sincerity. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, their shared history could evolve into mutual respect. As weeks turned into months, Anna continued to thrive in her new role. She became a trusted member of the team, known for her compassion, resourcefulness, and leadership. Colleagues often sought her advice, and patients praised her dedication. Slowly but surely, she rebuilt her confidence, not because of external validation, but because she knew she was making a difference. Through it all, Anna carried a quiet pride in how far she'd come. Losing her job had been devastating, yes, but it had also forced her to confront her fears, rediscover her purpose, and embrace her strength. Life had thrown her a curveball, and instead of crumbling, she'd learned to swing harder. By the end of the year, the Langston Foundation celebrated its first major milestone, the launch of a fully equipped mobile clinic serving remote areas across the state. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, Anna stood among the crowd, watching as families lined up to receive care. Tears welled in her eyes as she realized the magnitude of what they'd accomplished together. In that moment, she understood something profound. Redemption wasn't about erasing the past. It was about using it to build a better future. For herself, for others, and for the world around her. And as she looked ahead, Anna knew one thing for certain. No matter what challenges lay before her, she was ready to face them head-on. As the months rolled by, Anna's life began to settle into a rhythm she hadn't dared dream of during her darkest days. The mobile clinic project was thriving, bringing healthcare to communities that had long been forgotten. Families who once traveled hours for basic treatments now had access to doctors, nurses, and specialists right in their neighborhoods. It wasn't just about convenience, it was about dignity, trust, and hope. Every smile from a relieved parent or hug from a grateful child reminded Anna why she'd chosen this path. But beyond the tangible successes, Anna noticed something deeper happening within herself. She felt lighter, freer, not because everything was perfect, but because she'd come to terms with her past. Losing her job at St. Vincent's had once seemed like the end of the world, but now it felt more like a detour, a painful yet necessary chapter that had shaped her into the person she was today. Pain still lingered, sure, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it fueled her determination to keep moving forward. Richard Langston, too, had changed. Or maybe Anna simply saw him differently now. Their interactions grew less formal and more collaborative over time. He often sought her input on projects, valuing her perspective as someone who understood both the logistical challenges and the human side of healthcare. To his credit, he never treated her like a subordinate or tried to sweep their shared history under the rug. If anything, he seemed genuinely invested in making amends, not through grand gestures but through consistent actions. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings and site visits, Anna found herself sitting across from Richard, in the Foundation's cafeteria. They were the only two left in the building, sipping coffee and reviewing plans for an upcoming initiative. For once, the conversation drifted away from work. "You know," Richard said suddenly, breaking the silence. "I used to think success meant power, money, influence, control, but lately I've realized it's something else entirely." Anna raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What do you mean?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Success is seeing people thrive because of what you've done. It's knowing you've made someone's life better, even if it's in a small way. That's what drives me now. Not profits or headlines, but impact." Anna smiled faintly, surprised by his candor. "Funny," she said. "That sounds a lot like nursing." Richard chuckled softly, nodding. "Maybe we're not so different, after all." The comment caught Anna off guard, but she couldn't deny its truth. Despite their vastly different backgrounds, they shared a common goal: helping others. And though their methods differed, one driven by resources, the other by hands-on care, the outcome was the same. Together, they were proving that collaboration could bridge gaps neither of them could cross alone. Time moved quickly, and before Anna knew it, the foundation was celebrating its second anniversary. The event was held in a large auditorium filled with staff members, community leaders, and beneficiaries of the programs. Speeches were given, awards were handed out, and heartfelt stories poured forth from those whose lives had been transformed. When Anna's name was called to receive recognition for her contributions, she walked onto the stage feeling equal parts proud and humbled. Standing there, looking out at the sea of faces, she realized how interconnected everyone truly was. Each person in the room played a role in creating change, from the doctors and nurses delivering care to the volunteers, organizing events to the donors funding the projects. Even Richard, standing quietly in the wings, had played his part. None of it would have been possible without teamwork, perseverance, and a shared belief in a better future. In her speech, Anna didn't dwell on her struggles or the injustices she'd faced. Instead, she focused on gratitude for her family, her colleagues, and the countless individuals who inspired her every day. "We all carry scars," she said, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "But scars don't define us. What defines us is how we rise above them, how we use our pain to fuel purpose. Tonight, let's celebrate not just what we've achieved, but the resilience it took to get here." The crowd erupted in applause, and Anna stepped off the stage feeling lighter than ever. She wasn't just celebrating her own journey, she was honoring the collective strength of everyone around her. Months later, Anna stood outside the newest mobile clinic, watching as patients streamed inside. Children clung to their parents' hands, elderly couples leaned on each other for support, and young adults chatted nervously about upcoming exams. The air buzzed with energy, a mix of excitement and relief. This was what real progress looked like, not statistics or reports, but living, breathing proof of change. As she prepared to board the van that would take her to the next location, Richard approached her. "You're heading out already?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. Anna nodded, slinging her bag over her shoulder. "There's always more to do," she replied with a grin. "Besides, this place is in good hands." Richard smirked, shaking his head. "You never stop, do you?" "Why would I?" she shot back, laughing. "There's too much work to be done." They exchanged a brief look, one that spoke volumes without needing words. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but it was worth it. Redemption wasn't instant, but it was possible, and together they'd proven that even the hardest battles could lead to victories worth fighting for. With a final wave, Anna climbed into the van and closed the door. Behind her, as the vehicle pulled away, she gazed out the window at the horizon ahead. The road stretched endlessly, promising new challenges, new opportunities, and new ways to make a difference. Whatever lay ahead, Anna knew one thing for certain. She was ready. Life had thrown her curveballs, tested her limits, and forced her to confront her deepest fears. But through it all, she discovered something remarkable. Not just her own strength, but the power of compassion, forgiveness, and hope. And as long as she kept moving forward, She knew she'd continue to find light in the darkest corners of the world,